two special guests with us today that we're very pleased to welcome back. Benjamin Fisher and David Stover. We're delighted to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. And I see we have Pete Ojeda. Pete, are you with the LAPD by chance?
Yes, I'm under the command of Captain Tom. I'm the senior lead officer for the Westwood area, all the way north to Mulholland and bordering the 405 freeway and the Hollywood Hills border. So.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. Thank you for being with us.
Oh, my pleasure.
For some reason I'm looking at Ed Gauld's screen. Can you put that down, Ed? I'm stopping your screen sharing and going back to ours, excuse me. So, okay, bear with me a moment while I go back to where we were. That was interesting. Okay. And announcements for today. I'm a week late in honoring our June birthdays. My apologies. This year is going just too quickly to keep up with. So starting on June 19th, we have John Keefe celebrating a birthday. Steve Scherer will be celebrating his birthday on June 21st. And I apologize, I see I misspelled Sharon Bradford's name. Sharon Bradford's birthday is on the 22nd. So happy June birthdays. We have two wedding anniversaries this month. Eleanor and Jim Meyer, actually last Thursday. And this is truly impressive. Kathy and Ed Gauld will celebrate their 60th anniversary in a couple of weeks or 10 days. So congratulations, that's wonderful.
What's your secret?
The secret for another meeting, a whole meeting is what I mean to say.
The secret is to get married. I was 5 when I got married. My wife was 2. It was an arranged marriage.
Okay, that's something to consider. Child groom. We have a number of Rotary anniversaries this month, starting back on the 1st, Jim Meyer and Scott Whittle and David Friedman. And on Saturday, Chris Bradford's Rotary anniversary, and June 18th is Bill Edwards. And for those of you who did not see this, Terry and Diane and Ed all, and I thank you for this, sent me the recent obituary for John Singleton, past president of this club in 1981, 1982. And I thought this was a wonderful obituary for many reasons. It was obviously a life very well lived. And I lifted a quote that was, I think, really meaningful to us in that it cited his involvement with our club going back to 1956. And I'm also impressed by the decades of perfect attendance. I think that that's probably extremely rare. Again, he was president and later he was chair of the International Student Exchange Program. So I'm sorry I didn't have the opportunity to know him, but he sounded like a very special human being. And I know that a number of you did know him. So I wanted to be sure that you were aware of his passing. And as announced last week, we will be holding our next club assembly on Thursday, June 24th at 12:30. And we're aiming for an hour and 15 minutes. It might go less, but just in case we need more time, because it's really a dual celebration. It's both an opportunity for our long-range strategic planning committee to present plans for our club's top priorities. And that exact day, according to our club historian, Ron Leister, is also this club's 92nd birthday, which is really awesome. So we will address both in that meeting. And I want you to feel free to have your beverage of choice available to toast our club's birthday. And in honor of our birthday and in closing out a pretty challenging, but I think pretty successful year, we are offering a special Westwood Village Rotary Club Foundation Donation Challenge. We're encouraging our members to make special year-end contributions to our foundation, and the club will match those donations 2 to 1. And then the resulting funds will be divided between 2 causes that will be voted on by our members during the club assembly. So we will obviously talk about this again. And again, this is a little bit more information about the challenge. And
Yeah,
Diane,
I don't want to do Tom's job here, but Steve Shearer had a comment, I think, maybe related to John.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Steve?
Yes, Nancy, I raised my hand just after John Singleton.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
It's okay. And I know that many of us were inspired by John Singleton as a Rotarian, and he was absolutely one of the finest Rotarians that I've known. And I bet there are several people on this call that feel the same way about him. He was an inspiration to me in so many ways, and I won't start naming names of others, but and the other reason I raised my hand is that I also, and maybe this has been discussed before, but there was another obituary of Dick Littlestone, who died before Memorial Day as well, I think. And I don't know if people saw that, but Dick never was the president of the Westwood Village Rotary Club. In fact, there were presidents and past presidents of the Westwood Village Rotary Club that didn't want him to become president of the Westwood Village Rotary Club, but he was an amazing contributor. And I bet Ron Leister would have some good things to say about Dick Littlestone if we have time. He was a remarkable Rotarian too, don't you think, Ron?
I think so too. I'm sorry I didn't know that, Steve, that he had passed. There were a number of people when I was president that would help me out, and he was definitely one of them. Excuse me. Oh, and by the way, Nancy, your chat is off. I don't know. You can't use chat.
Oh, no.
It's disabled.
I didn't turn it off. Let's see. Oh, it's on my screen. Okay. There's some sort of technical glitch, I guess. I'll tell you what, and I'm glad you brought that up, Steve. I wasn't aware of that, so I'll look into that. And in next week's meeting, I'd be happy to carve out some time for us to talk about him. How about that? In Dick Littlestone, I'm talking about.
It says chat disabled. If you try to chat, it says chat disabled.
Okay. I don't know how to fiddle with that without stopping the meeting. And I don't know why it's not disabled on my screen. So if anybody wants to email or text me, that might be the best thing to do. That's curious. Okay. If somebody needs to contact me, ideally raise your hand if you could. The problem is I can't see everybody at once. So bear with me and we'll figure it out. Thank you. Okay. Move along. Diane, let me know that the USCLA Air Force ROTC sword ceremony has been rescheduled to a live event in case anybody's interested in going and representing us. We are providing the sword to the top graduating ROTC senior. And I see here I put Friday. I think that's incorrect. I believe the 6th is actually Tuesday. It's July 6th at 3 p.m. and it will be held at the LA Coliseum. And the Rotary International Virtual Convention starts on Saturday. It was originally announced to starting today. When I checked, I saw that they had moved the start date back to the 12th. So you can still register, and there is in-depth information on the convention website about the schedule and the speakers and the activities. So I encourage all of us to participate to the extent that we are able in the next few days. And I understand that our past president, Ali Shoji, is our scribe for today's meeting. Thank you, Ali. By the way, it's a gorgeous top you're wearing. And with that, Tom, I would like to ask you to introduce our very interesting speaker for today.
Thank you, Nancy. Today, we are privileged to hear from a local product who has risen to the position of commanding officer for the Los Angeles Police Department on the West Side, Captain Jonathan Tom. Captain Tom was born and raised in LA, a proud fifth-generation Angelino. He went to LA Unified Schools, attended University High School, and a proud graduate from USC. He formerly served as the commanding officer of the Critical Incident Review Division, responsible for facilitating the review and adjudication of uses of force on behalf of the Chief of Police. This position also provided administrative support and training to officers, supervisors, and command personnel. Captain Tom has worked assignments in all 4 geographic bureaus, giving him experience in various communities, including commanding officer of these units: South Traffic Division, Rampart Patrol Division, Olympic Detective Division, and the Southwest Area Vice Unit. Southwest Area Vice, woo. On his way up the ladder, he served as investigator at the Professional Standards Bureau and Detective Headquarters Division, Gun Unit. He was also firearms instructor at Training Division, on patrol at the Special Problems Unit in West Valley, West LA, and Southwest Divisions. Captain Tom has had an opportunity to work in different leadership positions during special events, such as the Space Shuttle Endeavor to the California Science Center, Academy Awards, and NHL and NBA championships, among others. Captain Tom is a member of the department's peer support cadre, board member for a law enforcement association, and former delegate for the Los Angeles Protective League. His personal philosophy is for all personnel to work hard, treat each other with respect, and provide service to the community as if the people you are dealing with were your own family. Although Captain Tom will address home protection, he is open to other areas of concern you may have, as we've already experienced in the pre-meeting. Rotarians, let us welcome our police commander for the West Side, Captain Jonathan Tom.
Thank you very much, sir. That's a wonderful welcome. Thank you very much. I sound impressive, but I'm not that impressive. I'm just another guy. But if you could indulge me, if I could introduce again our senior lead officer, Pete Ojeda. If we could give him maybe just 2 minutes to explain his role and what he does for the Westwood area. I think it's really important for him to do that and for you to know who he is. So the reality is that while I get kind of the accolades and I get the glory of being the captain here, it's our police officers, our men and women that are out on the street, such as Officer Ojeda, that are really doing in my mind, the Lord's work. I'm a religious person, so I'm sorry if I offend anyone with that statement, but they are out there putting their lives on the line for you. He is, as a senior lead officer, they are your single point of contact as a community liaison for a specific area, and they kind of serve as a point that is a continuity of service for you, right? And so what I'd like him to do is just to kind of again introduce himself, give his email address, and then we could maybe, if you would like to have him back for a longer talk, we can do that. But I just wanted to give him the opportunity. He did come in on a day off to address the group and introduce himself. So if that's okay, I'd like to do that.
Please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me today. Thank you, Captain Tom. I'm a senior lead officer, Pete Ojeda. I've been on this department for approximately I'll be 19 years, July 1st. And I've had a great career here. I've been in the West LA division for approximately 16 of those years. Done my probation in Central and in the academy time. I've been a patrol officer. I worked narcotics division. I worked vice division. I worked the special problems division, plainclothes division, units, I'm sorry, here in West LA. And then I was a field training officer prior to coming here and getting the job approximately about a year ago. My job, as Captain Tom says, is, you know, a lot of it is quality of life issues. I'm your liaison, reach out to me for anything that you have in regards to any community problems, long-term community problems. I speak with the officers on a daily basis on my basic car, which my basic car area handles from Santa Monica to the south, Santa Monica Boulevard to the south, 405 freeway to the east, to the west, north to Mulholland, and the Hollywood Hills, Beverly Hills border. So I handle a big swath of land, and with Captain Tom's help and the other officers, I'm able to do my job as best I can for you. So I'll give you my email address, and my that's literally the best way to get a hold of me. I have that thing pretty much attached to me, and my email address is 36393 at lapd.online. That's 36393 at lapd.online. I'm here to answer any questions for you. You can also reach out to me at any given time. If you have other meetings or other events that you'd like me to attend, or I can request our specialized units, narcotics, NED, vice, anybody that needs to come with us and join to explain anything to you, I'd be more than happy.
That was 36393 at lapd.online.
Yes, Phil.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Pete. Pete, I think we can release you and you can go home and get some sleep. So Pete was working all last night. He was working the UCLA Undie Run. You know, they had about 1,800 kids out on the campus, and so LAPD had a contingent out there just in case it were to go sideways, which it didn't. So anyway, so he's been up all night, and like I said, he did come in on his day off, and so I'd like to release him, invite him to come back. He's this is part of what he does, engaging the community and asking questions and helping you deal with those kind of little quality of life issues that kind of are bothersome to us in general as community members. But sometimes you think, you know, the police don't have time for this. This is what Pete does for a regular, you know, job on a day-to-day basis. So feel free to invite him back. Okay. All right.
Thank you all for having me. Be safe.
Thank you, Pete. Appreciate it. So for the group, Tom did obviously a great job of reading from my bio, but so my family has grown. I grew up in Los Angeles. My family came to Los Angeles area in 1875. So we've been longtime residents, and I like to say that we've been kind of, the Tom family's been part and parcel of the landscape of the city of LA. We've seen it obviously change quite a bit in the 140 plus years that we've been around. And I grew up, if any of you did business downtown, you might know my family from the New Moon restaurant. It was a pretty famous Chinese restaurant that was on 9th and San Pedro. So a lot of the downtown business people knew my family. And if you'd ever been there, you know, years ago, it closed in I think 1992 after the riots. But prior to that, if you'd been down there, you might have seen me doing homework at one of the tables, or sleeping on two chairs pushed together, because, you know, as you know, if you've ever worked in or grown up in a restaurant, it is almost it's a 7-day-a-week job, and your kids end up working alongside with you. So, you know, we learn to bus tables and take orders and do everything that needs to be done. And so that's kind of my background. As someone had mentioned, Tom had mentioned this, I went to University High School, graduated class of 87. I went to USC, and I ended up going to law school, went to Whittier Law School for a year. Got a job as a law clerk for the city of LA City Attorney's Office. and I hated it. It was horrible, you know. So no offense to the attorneys out there, but you know, that legal research was just, for me, it was mind numbing. And I ended up speaking to my boss about that, and not sure if the field of law was what I wanted to get into. And she told me, go talk to my husband, and he loves his job. And so he was an LAPD sergeant who ended up retiring. His name was Terry Hara. And if you knew him, he was the deputy chief overseeing Operations West Bureau later on in his career. And so he was the reason I came on the job, and I've never looked back. It's been a wonderful job and a career. I've got 25 years on the job, and I've been a captain for over 5 years now. So, I think I forgot to mention that I did my probation here in West LA. So I started my career in West LA, and I may be ending my career in West LA, and I find it to be just a wonderful community. The support that we've gotten overall. Prior to the meeting starting, kind of had some offline conversations about how difficult it has been to be a police officer over the last year. And we've had really low morale overall as a department. We've had some officers leaving early, but overall, the community here has been so supportive of our officers working in West LA division that you've made my job much easier to help continue to motivate our officers and keep them focused on what they need to do, which is to provide you with safety and security in your community. So overall, I'm really happy to be here. I'm excited to be on this call, happy to meet any of my community members. And as Tom had indicated, I was asked originally to come and speak about kind of home security and safety, which I think is something that is on the minds of everyone. Your home should feel like a sanctuary. It should feel like the one place in this world that you're the safest. And yet I think that if we think about current events and what we see on the news and other things, I think that a lot of us feel a sense of unease. We've seen homelessness explode. We've seen or heard about burglaries on the rise. And I would say that that is true. There have been an increase in burglaries. However, recently we've made some really great arrests. And as a result of investigations and a task force that we have going on, we've actually seen a decrease in the number of burglaries that we've seen recently. So if you weren't aware, we had a series of burglaries that was happening where, several people would essentially case or surveil homes, especially in the hills here. And they would perhaps go up to the door, knock on the door, pretend that they were an Amazon delivery driver or a Grubhub, delivery driver, and see if there was anyone home. And what they would do is, if no one answered, then they would go around to the back of the residence. They would force open a rear door or a window by breaking it or kicking it in. They would ransack the location, and in some residences, they were able to get over $500,000 in jewelry and cash and other items, high-end type residences. Since we started seeing that spike in burglaries, we ended up making over 10 arrests from different areas. Primarily, our suspects were coming from South Los Angeles, and they were gang members. And so they were what's called a flocking crew. If you've never heard that term before, flocking is kind of like birds flock together. And what this phenomenon was happening is that you'd have gang members from different gangs coming together, or flocking, as it were, to do these kinds of crimes. And so we had seen gang members from different gangs coming together, which normally you wouldn't see that kind of collaboration. But they were doing that in order to facilitate their criminal enterprise of breaking into homes and fencing their goods, etc. So like I said, we'd made numerous arrests. I think we've made over 10 arrests for that series, and we saw a drastic drop off in those types of burglaries. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not seeing any burglaries, because we do. So the reality is that West Los Angeles area, the division that I'm in charge of, is 65 square miles. It's actually 64.7, but for the sake of conversation, I call it 65. And that number by itself sounds big, but to put it in perspective, I like to draw an analogy to the city of San Francisco, which is laid out in a 7-mile by 7-mile grid. So it's 49 square miles. So if you think about the entire city of San Francisco, fits well within the boundaries of West Los Angeles division. Wow. So we have a huge division. We have numerous single-family dwellings. Of course, we have apartment buildings, but a lot of the target of our burglaries is going to be our single-family dwellings. And so I have, if I'm able to share, see if I can share the screen here. Okay, can you see the screen? It says
Yes.
home. Okay,
Yes.
home burglary prevention tips. And so I have this, our crime analysis detail put together this burglary prevention tips flyer, which I can send out to someone if they're interested in it. And essentially it talks about some of the, the tips that we have. So obviously you've heard the LAPD talk about lock it, hide it, keep it. And so we just remind people to lock up all of your doors, your windows, your sheds, your garages, et cetera. And I think that one of the things that happens in our community is that it is very safe. It's one of the safest communities in the city of Los Angeles. But because it is safe, I think that people have a false sense of security. And so we find that people oftentimes leave their garage doors open. They leave windows and doors open at night. Sometimes they leave to go on an errand. They think it's going to be really quick, so they leave the back door unlocked. And that's when sometimes these burglaries are occurring. So if our suspects are watching your residences and you leave, they're going to make that attempt. Like we said, they're going to go to the door. Generally speaking, they're not interested in doing a burglary or a home invasion where someone is home. That is very rare. I could count those since in the year and a half that I've been here. I think there's maybe been one of those, and it would seem like that might have been on accident. So anyways, lock up your doors, windows, exterior buildings, etc. If you have a security system, we suggest that you arm it. I've had quite a few community members tell me that in the aftermath of a burglary, oh, you know what, I did have a security system, but I didn't arm it. So if you have that security system, make sure it's armed and monitored. Make your house look like it's occupied. So if you're away from your house, especially at night, or you go on vacation somewhere, it's a good idea to have your lights on timers, leave television or radio on, and make sure that there's a vehicle visible in the driveway. It just gives the appearance, at least, of someone being there. Of course, if you're away for an extended period of time and you have mail piling up in your driveway or around your mailbox, it's definitely a good idea to contact the United States Postal Service and put a stop on your mail, or at least have your neighbors or staff come and pick up that mail. Video doorbells are a great tool. We've been able to use them on several cases where we've been able to identify suspects from video or license plates as vehicles are driving by, or when a suspect's vehicle drives up into the driveway. We've been able to see license plates and faces, and been able to solve cases based on that, and of course on other circumstances. Lighting, we really recommend that you have not only those cameras installed on the exterior of your house, but to have motion lights. Criminals don't like motion lights. Inventory, so inventory your valuable things, take photographs, note down serial numbers. If it's something that you don't mind inscribing, say a driver's license number or a partial of a social security number or some other indication that something belongs to you, that's helpful when we recover items for us to make sure that we are returning the property to you, but also that we can tie that suspect and that evidence to a particular crime. So if you believe a suspect is inside your house and you're outside, don't go inside and try to figure out what's going on in there. Just call 911 and wait outside. If you're home and you believe that someone is breaking in, again, try to secure yourself in a location within your house. I'm going to stop the share here if I can figure out how to do that. Did it stop? Am I back? Okay. So what we want to do is to, I'm getting some, okay. What we want to do is we want to make your house appear like your home, even when you're not home. We want your neighbors to, basically, we want you to have a good relationship with your neighbors so that they're keeping an eye out. I think that just that community aspect of crime prevention goes a long way. And kind of like, when you're a younger person, You think about the older nosy neighbor and why are they always paying attention to everything? As a homeowner, I love that neighbor. I love for my neighbors to be paying attention. I would love for them to know when I'm not home, quite frankly, so I want that. And if I'm away from my house, I make sure that I tell at least 2 to 3 neighbors that I'm going to be away for the weekend. There shouldn't be anyone coming to my house. If you see anything out of place, call the police or call me and let me know. But essentially, those are kind of our home.
Hello, this is Carol. Yes. Good afternoon, Miss Carol.
Carol, your microphone is on.
Not anymore.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, so generally speaking, those are kind of the general tips and things. But the one thing that I talk about all the time is in general. If you think about National Geographic, we've all watched National Geographic growing up, and we watched the lions stalking the wildebeest on the plains. And the analogy that I always make to people is that, did you ever see the lion attacking the wildebeest that is looking at them? And the answer is generally, you've never seen that. Because the lion, as strong as the lion is looking for the weakest prey. They're looking for the wildebeest that's not paying attention. They're looking for the baby wildebeest. They're looking for the ones that are injured. So what I'm saying is that our human predators are the people that are doing burglaries and attacking people, committing robberies, etc. They're really not any different than the prey animals. They're looking for easy targets. They want to get away. They want to maximize their gain, and they want to get away so that they can do it again. They're not generally looking for people that are paying attention to them. And so just the fact of you paying attention, noticing people in your own neighborhoods will help keep you safe. And when I say that, I don't expect or want you to go up and confront people that you think don't belong in your neighborhood. What I do in my own neighborhood when I see someone who I've never seen before is I will go out of my way to wave at them, make eye contact with them. And if they are within earshot of me, I'll say, hey, how you doing? Are you new to the neighborhood? Can I help you? Do you need anything? Just that kind of contact, eye contact, and establishing kind of a communication with that person will oftentimes cause those suspects who are doing surveillance in your neighborhoods to just move on to the next one, because they want easy targets, so they don't want to get caught. And if you did just what I just explained, they're going to move on. That's generally speaking what's going to happen. So those are my general crime prevention tips. And I know that there's a lot of questions from our pre-conversation as the meeting opened up, and I'm open to whatever questions you may have.
I've got one, Captain, something that drives me crazy. That's it was about 2 weeks ago, I guess, that we had protests at the federal building, and they closed down Wilshire Boulevard. And so the people couldn't even see who they were protesting, what they were protesting about. Why do we allow that to happen when you have to shut down the traffic, make it very difficult for people to move within the Westwood Village because of protests who 99% of the people don't care about anyway?
It's a fair question, and it does impact the community when we do street closures or when they take over the street. Quite frankly, sometimes they're doing that themselves. So primarily the job of the police during a protest is to facilitate First Amendment speech, First Amendment freedom of assembly. And so quite frankly, some of the other rights, your rights to free traffic and travel within a specific area will be infringed in order for us to ensure that those First Amendment rights are facilitated. So generally speaking, LAPD does not want to shut down traffic. We would like to keep it open. But as we've seen in the past, when the crowds grow to large numbers, and the federal building, unfortunately, it's a national symbol. It attracts people to come there and to voice their opinions about a myriad of issues that really have nothing to do with the federal building. They just go there because it's iconic. And so when we have smaller groups, you'll see that we don't shut down traffic. We allow them to do whatever it is that they want to do in terms of how long they want to stay there and whatever their message is. LAPD doesn't take the sides on that. We're just trying to facilitate. But when the crowds become large and they start to spill out onto the sidewalk, and we can't get them to stay on the sidewalk, that's when we will shut down traffic because we're concerned about one of them getting hit. And so the other issue that we saw, and we shut down traffic specifically for this reason, was that during the Azerbaijan and Armenian protests, and also with the pro-Palestinian and pro-Israeli protests, what we saw was that there were agitators that were coming. So let's say it was a pro-Palestinian protest at the federal building. There were people with Israeli flags driving by, flipping people off, and that was inciting the crowd on the sidewalk to run into the street after the people that were driving by with the flags. That same exact scenario happened when it was the opposite, when it was a pro-Israeli rally and you had people driving by with Palestinian flags. I mean, so there's no right or wrong in this. I'm just explaining that one of the things that we try to do is try to minimize violence. And so when we have those scenarios where those emotions are so high, and we have we're starting to see that kind of activity with the counter protests, then the easiest thing for us to do is shut down vehicular traffic to try to prevent those crowds from erupting into violence, because ultimately we want them to continue with their freedom of speech and assembly. Once it does erupt into violence, then we're forced to declare unlawful assembly, and then we have to disperse the crowd. And then there becomes a lot of issues there, because how do we disperse the crowd? Generally speaking, we give an unlawful assembly order. We give them a direction of travel to leave from the area. But if they refuse to do it, then we have to resort to using force. And that then LAPD becomes the story. And so what we tell our officers all the time is that your job in facilitating these things is to protect life and property. That's number one and number two. And then number three would be to facilitate freedom of speech and assembly. And number four would be, don't become the story. Quite frankly, LAPD has had enough, and law enforcement has had enough of bad press. We don't want to be the story for any of these things. These protests primarily have been not about the police, and we don't want it to become about the police. So I understand your concern and the concerns of many people, but that's the explanation.
I had
Nancy.
a question, and
Right.
going from what you're talking about to the mundane, is it true that shoplifting is not enforced unless it's more than $950?
So that's not true in the big picture. So it is still a crime, but under $900 would be a misdemeanor. So if the shoplifting, like any misdemeanor, is not committed in the officer's presence, it's up to the store to press charges against the individual that committed that theft, that misdemeanor theft. And so what we've seen, realistic or honestly, over the past, I would say since the summer, since a lot of these protests happened, you had a lot of stores that were not wanting to become the story and were essentially allowing people to steal from their stores. What we've seen recently is an increase in the number of stores that are wanting to prosecute people, because essentially it's gone, their shrinkage is the term that they use in industry. The shrinkage is so high that some of these stores have had to shut down. And so it's not that we won't do anything, it's that it's up to the store, if it's under $900, to essentially prosecute those people.
I have a question. With all the talk about defunding the police, and there's even neighborhood councils who've gone on record about defunding the police, how does it affect the morale and the psychology of the officers? And how are they dealing with that? Is that contributing to people retiring? I took the LAPD civilian 10-week class, and I met a lot of good officers. I mean, every single man and woman I met, they were good people, good solid people. And every profession is going to have the 1% of people who just are bad actors. But how's LAPD dealing with the psychological issues and weighing on them? And the other question is, if there was some type of program where LAPD officers could get a grant to live in the neighborhoods where they patrol, is that something that they'd be interested in?
So I'll take the second question first, because that's the easiest one. The answer is yes. So they had officer next door programs for years. When I was a younger officer, there were programs that many officers did that. I mean, so the reality is people ask me, where do I live? And I tell them, I live in Long Beach. So I live in the city of Long Beach. And the answer for why did I choose Long Beach is because I wanted to live in the city of LA, but I couldn't afford it. So I grew up in the city. I knew nothing about any other city other than the city of Los Angeles, because I spent my entire life here. My family lived here also. But when it came down time for me to purchase my own home, and I was looking around at a home that I could afford on a police officer's salary, the reality was that I couldn't afford to live anywhere that I wanted to live in the city, anywhere where I felt it was safe. And so I think that if there were programs, yes, of course, you would have officers that would avail themselves of that, and they would live, in the city of Los Angeles. Of course, there'd have to be guidelines like there were before, where you have to stay in the house for a certain amount of time before you could sell it, and officers were willing to do all those things. I don't know whatever happened to that program. But going on to the first part of your question, it was about how has morale been impacted, and thank you for that question. It's been impacted quite a bit, and on a personal level, I've struggled personally with being in this profession, and it sometimes feels like you're in a relationship where the other person doesn't appreciate you, right? So when you're in a relationship where your spouse or your boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever it is, they appreciate you, you're willing to do a lot for that person. You're willing to sacrifice everything for that person. But when you feel that the other person doesn't appreciate you or really even value you or want you to be there, it makes you question whether you want to be in that relationship. And that's truthfully what's happened with a lot of police officers. And as I indicated, I think in NYPD, it's very publicly been reported that they've lost 15% of their entire department in the last year and a half. So they've lost over 5,000 police officers due to early retirements and early retirements. I spoke to an NYPD officer, and I'll get to LAPD, but an NYPD officer that came and visited us recently. And she said that basically in New York, if you have over 20 years on the job, you're all looking at each other wondering, why are you still here? And so we have not had that same kind of gut reaction in city of Los Angeles. And I think a lot of what's happened in New York is that they've lost qualified immunity. So their own city council has voted to remove qualified immunity for their own police officers. And if you're interested, I can explain what qualified immunity is, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about that. But within the city of LA, we've lost, I think we're on track to lose 600 police officers from retirements and early retirements and people just quitting in the last year. Those people haven't been replaced. We've had one police academy that graduated, I think in the last year, 40 police officers. So if you have 600 officers that left and you only added 40, we're down 500 and some odd police officers from where we were just a year ago. So the number of police officers is significantly less. That has changed the way that we're doing operations. So we've gone with a lot of online reporting. We've downsized Metropolitan Division, which is our elite division that does crime suppression details. We've downsized our robbery homicide division. We've gotten rid of things like the animal cruelty task force. There's a lot of effects to this defunding that you're talking about. And least of which is the morale. And I think that the impact to morale is kind of incalculable, to be honest with you. It's hard to say exactly how does this impact our officers, but there's a lot of conversations that are happening within our ranks of anyone that has time where they could retire, where they're talking about it in a place where they wouldn't be before. So someone like me who has 25 years on the job is thinking about retiring. And you wouldn't really have heard a lot of people with my time on thinking about that, because generally you want to do around 30 years. But it's a complicated relationship. It's like that, on Facebook where they say, like, what's your relationship? And the joke was, it's complicated. That's kind of the relationship. I think right now it's complicated with police officers. But so I want to end that question on a positive note, though, is like I had said earlier, the support that we've gotten in particular from this community has enabled us to continue to really refocus our officers in a positive way. And I tell them that while we don't have the shootings and the homicides that other divisions have had, this community needs you as much or more than any other time in our history. And so we have had our police officers, and you don't have access to the numbers that I do, but they are being very productive. We've made really great arrests over the last year. They're still engaged. They're still doing their job, but it is complicated, right? So every time that you hear this negativity about police officers in general, to be honest, and Diane had raised a point about, well, don't African Americans have a legitimate cause of concern with policing, et cetera? Absolutely, they do. But every time that there is this negativity that comes around, you have to remember that being a police officer is a choice. None of us are required to do this. And many of us have other options. We can go into family businesses. There's other stuff that we can do. And so if you make this job so difficult that you wouldn't do it yourself, then ask yourself, will police officers do it? Because they have other options. There's other jobs out there. It's not the only job in the world. Most of us do this job not to be rich. We do this job because we have a heart of service and we wanted to make a difference in the community. And that's the God's honest truth. And I know Phil had mentioned he'd met some police officers. And I think that if you were to meet police officers and talk to them, kind of like you're getting the chance to talk to me, you'll see that we're human beings. We're fathers, we're mothers, we're brothers and sisters and sons and daughters, and we are human beings. And so there's only so much, truthfully, that you can take as a human being. And so that's my concern. I'm at the end of my career, but I'm concerned about my mom still lives in the city. I am concerned in general about what is public safety going to look like as we move forward. If we make it so hard for police officers to be police officers, will you get the quality police officers that you need in the future? And I don't know the answer to that. I hope so. I hope so.
Thank you for your honesty. We have actually a number of people who are eager to ask questions. Benjamin, sure. You have had your hand up for quite a while, and then Ed and Diane and Brian.
So Captain Tom, you've been very eloquent in your speaking. I have a question. I live in Mar Vista, which is not the greatest area at this moment with all the homeless, and they've been coming walking up the street. What would you do if you were me? Because a police in this division, hands off. They don't want to touch them. What would you do? Because the community that I'm living in is all armed. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, and I don't know what to do. And so I'm going to ask you from a professional opinion what you would do.
It's a fair question. And quite honestly, I struggle with this myself. So I'm a very empathetic person, and I think about a lot of the concerns, emails, phone calls, text messages that I get from my community members here. And quite frankly, I don't have to deal with this in Long Beach. I don't have homeless encampments. I don't have large amounts of homeless people walking around within my own community. So that makes me think that there's some kind of policies and other practices that are in place here in the city that are contributing to some of these issues. Now, I'm not a politician, and again, I'm referring to this pre-conversation that we had before the meeting started. My job as a police officer, as a police captain, is to remain apolitical. So you won't hear me saying that you should get rid of your council member and you should do this and you should do that. What I would say as a community member, though, legitimately, I think there's two different things going on. One is, how do I impact the policies and the practices of the police department and of the city where I live? And number two is, what do I do on a personal level to keep myself and my family safe? And so from the political and practices perspective, what I would be doing is I would be speaking to your elected officials, and I would be, truthfully, I would be unending in my criticism and in my trying to, I want to be correct in the way that I say these things, but I would be persistent. I'll put it that way. I would be persistent with my elected officials in terms of what it is that I want. And I think that the reality is that our politicians are elected officials and they want to be reelected. And so I think that if what Tom had said earlier, which is that the majority, I think it was Tom, it said that the majority of people do not support defunding the police. And yet our politicians have supported that. And I would think that a lot of their support comes from their belief, mistaken or not, that the community supported that notion, right? If you ever listen to any of the city council meetings, or the Budget and Finance Committee subcommittee hearings, which are all public, all you heard was negative, and you heard defund the police, defund the police. So if in fact the majority of people do not support defunding the police, or if in fact the majority of people do not support homeless rights over anyone else's rights, I don't think that those voices are being heard. And so I think that's a challenge for a community to really mobilize and galvanize your community members so that they do get actively involved in politics and in the selection of your council people and your mayor and your city attorney and everyone else that has a lot to say. And I'll finish on this, Benjamin, is that I've spoken to some very affluent people in this community that have indicated that they thought that maybe they focused on the wrong elections, that they were focusing on national level elections for the president and for senators, et cetera, when really they realize now that they should have all along been focusing on council members, city attorneys, district attorneys, and the mayor, because those are the people that impact local policies and practices and are impacting your own quality of life. And so you won't find me criticizing any of my elected officials because they're my bosses, quite frankly, as are you. And that's our job not to do that. But I think just get involved. And on a personal level, be really aware of your surroundings. You're right. You're right to be concerned. Homeless people are not criminals by nature, right? I mean, we have to say that it's not a crime to be homeless and that not every homeless person is a criminal. Not every homeless person is mentally deranged, and not every homeless person is on drugs, right? That's the truth, and we have to acknowledge that. But there are some that you have to worry about, and you have to be aware of your surroundings. If it was me and I give my wife pepper spray, she carries it on a keychain. She carries it everywhere that she goes. Even though we live in a relatively safe community, I want her to be prepared. I want her to think about the scenarios that could happen and what are your avenues of escape, and what would I do if I had my son, and what would I do if I didn't have him? Where can I run to, or where can I go to? These are all conversations, unfortunately, that you have to have with your families to keep them safe.
Thank you, Dr. Tom, Captain Tom. I would just like
My mom
to
wanted me to be a doctor, sorry.
if I could just briefly interrupt you, we normally end at 1:30, but there's a lot of interest in what you have to say, and we have several more questions. Do you have time to stay on with us a little bit longer?
I do. I have 30 more minutes if you know.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
It's important for me as well. So
thank you. Thank you so much. Ed, you were waiting to ask a question. You're on mute, Ed.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. A number of the communities have their own security company. For example, the street I live in Westwood has ACS. One of my questions I have, to the extent they have those companies patrolling, doesn't that have a factor in reducing crime? And the other question I have is, how do you interface with companies like ACS? Because I really see cars driving around, and I don't think you need to, because as you has indicated, there's relatively little crime in Westwood, and you have these private security companies.
Thank you for your question. And so, yes, we do have a lot of private security here on the west side, and referencing the questions earlier about defunding the police. And I want to get to this, but I think it's an important point. We had a meeting with some young African-American students from South LA, and we were talking about defunding the police. And I told them, I said, let's be honest about who this is going to impact. It's not going to impact my community as much as it's going to impact yours. And the reason is because my residents have the ability, many of them, to hire private security. And so when you have less police officers, what is the response of people that have the wherewithal to do it? Hire more security. You have more security patrols, more armed guards, more private security on your own property. There's obviously a lot of people that have a lot of money there. And so that defunding has disproportionately impacted the communities that need it the most. And so going back to your question, how do we interface with them? Do I see value in them? Do I think that they reduce crime? Absolutely. I think that they're a great resource So we work with ACS, their captain, Aaron Sias, and I have our cell phone numbers of each other. We work with Gate Security, Apollo Security, SAS. There's a whole slew of security companies that we liaison with on a regular basis. We have quarterly meetings with them where we kind of get their heads or their security guys together and we talk about crimes and what's going on with them. What do they see? I think they're an incredible force multiplier for the police department. Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough about them. I think that they, in general, do a great job, and their mere presence does deter crime.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Diane, I think you were next.
Sure. Captain Tom, I don't have a question, but I've been a 20-year resident of the Brentwood neighborhood, and your group has done a fabulous job there. We very much appreciate you, and we appreciate your staff. They've helped with the homeless problem. They attend all the neighborhood council meetings. They answer questions. They're available by email, by phone. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
That's
Appreciate
great.
that.
Thank you,
Very nice.
Diane. Brian, you had a question?
Yes. Hi, Captain Tom. So a comment and two questions. First of all, I grew up going to the New Moon.
Oh,
and we had
love
some of our best. I mean, those family style dinners were just amazing down there. So thank you for that. I can't wait to talk to my mom about the New Moon. Great
I love
memories.
it. Yeah.
And after the riots here, I worked in Century City. I would go to Gelson's for, to get lunch. And I was always offering to buy sandwiches for the cops. The cops would always decline. The National Guardsmen would always mow them down. But I think for all of us with your morale down, what are some of the good things that we can do to show our officers how much we appreciate them? What are some of the more creative things you've heard about?
Well, thank you, Brian, and thank you for your support. As has been expressed by a lot of people, we've had some really great examples of morale builders where some people have purchased food trucks. We've had we've had maybe three food trucks coming into our own parking lot, serving our officers. That's been really nice. We've had meals delivered to the station. We had two community members that built. Well, they've donated the money to build an outdoor patio on our backyard or back of the station. If you don't know, our station was built, I think, in 1975. So it's one of the oldest stations within the city. They're talking about doing a huge renovation of the Civic Center right next to us. And originally it was talked about that part of that process would be a new police station. We got really excited, and then we found out, no, that's too much money. We're not going to do it. So we're stuck with our station the way that it is. And so the funding with the city is really not there for upgrades and improvements. We have another group, the Friends of West LA, that's redoing our break room. So they're gonna paint it and put some new furniture and some new equipment in there. There's other things like that within the station that we're thinking about doing, like the roll call room, the workout room, our weight room, as it were. Those are all things that have been dilapidated over the years. And if you're asking, those are the types of things that would help us. We funnel any request like that through our police and community together. It's West LA Pact, and that's basically the 501c3 that handles any donations to the department. And for the group's awareness, whenever a donation comes in, it has to be approved by not food. Food can be just donated to the station, but anything cash or any durable goods that are not related to COVID, they have to be approved by the police commission. So there's a process whereby, we write a letter, we describe what the donation is for, police commission reviews it, and then they have to approve it before we can actually move forward with whatever it is that we're going to do. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, so it seems like one of the best ways is to contact one of these, like your West LA Pact maybe, and they'll know what your needs are. That's kind of,
and what I can, thank you. And what I can do is I can, I'll give out my email now, because now is a good as time as any. 32993 @lapd.online. That's 32993 lapd.online. So those numbers, when you hear our email addresses, the first numbers before the @ are serial numbers. So that's unique to each police officer. So that's why when you heard Officer Ojeda's number at lapd.online, that's how we get our email addresses. Okay. So if you email me directly, I can connect you with the president of our pact, and you can discuss whatever you wanted to do.
And also Captain Tina Nieta used to be with our Rotary Club.
Oh, that's right.
That she could get us some FATS range time. Is that something that
well, it's possible. It is possible. Our simulator is down, so that's okay. It's another funding issue. That we're trying to overcome a lot of this stuff. There's just no money really to do any of these things. We're lucky to put gas in our cars, and it's actually pretty embarrassing. If you look at some of our black and white patrol cars that are driving around, there's peeling paint and there's all kinds of issues, but this is the reality of the reduced budgets. Now, I think that there's something that came up recently was that the mayor had approved our recent budget, and they had talked about there was a 3% increase in the budget. My understanding is that was as compared to the previous budget. And so what our chief of police has said is that 3% does not bring us back to where we were. It's just going to keep us at the 9,500 police officer range right now. So.
Do we have more questions? Captain Tom, thank you so much for all of the time and the thoughtful responses that you have shared with us. I've learned a lot today, speaking for myself, and I'm sure others have too. And thank you also for inviting Pete Ojeda. That's a really valuable contact. He's a valuable contact for us to have as well. So as a token of our appreciation, we will be making a donation in your honor to the Westwood branch of the Los Angeles Public Library. And I know that we will want to stay in touch with you and look for ways that we can be supportive.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the invite, and it was wonderful to meet everyone. And are you going to be going back to in-person meetings at any point?
Yes, okay. Soon.
Okay, well, I'd love to come back and just, even if I'm not a speaker, just to shake hands with people. I've really enjoyed it. I think all of us have had enough of being locked up, and these Zoom meetings are great, but I think there's no substitute for in-person meetings.
Well, you will definitely be on the invitation list. I can promise you that.
Thank you. Thank you. We would look forward to it.
We would love to see you again. And then if you want to bring other colleagues, they would be welcome.
Yeah, absolutely, I will. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you again for being with us. Delighted to see all of you today. We will meet again, same time, same place next Thursday, June 17th. Have a great, safe, happy, and healthy week in the meantime.
Thank you, Captain.